Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Wisdom Webinars, the 18th of July 2022. And this is my birthday Wisdom webinar. Happy birthday to me. Thank you, everybody, for the lovely birthday wishes. So this evening, I called this the power of silence, because I've been seeing so much about the power of silence recently. So I'm going to do a little preamble on what I'm seeing about that and where I'm at with it. And then, of course, as usual, anybody who has questions, insights, anything to share, any experiences in their own life, then I'd love to hear from you. I'm going to start with what occurred to me earlier was what I already knew was how powerful silence is when we're listening to people. And we did obviously previous webinars and previous videos on listening. So I won't go too much about that. But when I was thinking about it earlier, I was thinking how, when you leave a gap and someone's speaking to you and you just keep listening and you're silent and you don't interrupt, or you don't jump in with what you're thinking about, and you leave that space, they often keep talking. And partly that's because they are embarrassed by the silence, or they're uncomfortable with the silence. So if you leave a long enough space, people will fill it. But what I've noticed more and more is that people go deeper. So they don't just fill it with nothing. They go a little bit deeper into what they were talking about. So you get to uncover a little bit more of what they want to say and why they're saying what they want to say. So I was thinking about that as a really amazing way of being with someone, to allow that space and allow that silence. And then, of course, there's speaking, running a webinar or speaking on stage or telling a story, and how powerful the gaps in between can be. I've had the experience of, I tend to speak from in the moment. So what I'm saying right now, I haven't rehearsed or I haven't written it down. I've thought about it, I've considered it during the day, but I haven't planned it. So when I'm presenting like this, I'll often speak slower naturally, because I'm allowing the thoughts to come to me, and then I'll say them. So it happens to be, for me, a natural way. And I've really enjoyed being able to do that, because it means that I have space between, let's say, my insecurity or my nervousness about sharing, and actually what might be useful or helpful to other people that comes out of my mouth. So the silence really helps. And these are sort of like the pragmatic ways that silence helps. So more to do with the usefulness of silence, really. And another instance was about 18 months ago. We started a channel called Mindset Runners, and it was all to do with my, I'd started running, and it was my running experience. And I was quite surprised that when I put a few things out on Instagram, people really found that inspirational. So they seem to find that more inspirational than all the hundreds of lives that I've saved. So I thought, well, it's really interesting. So maybe this could be of service to people. So we started the channel, and my son was helping me, and we got this channel going. And I did some 2 or 3 videos in advance to upload with some little running things that I'd done. And when we looked at those videos, I basically spent the whole time using the filler so as I'm thinking, I'm doing this, and it was really noticeable, and I hadn't even realized that I do that. So I proceeded then to train myself out of the umness, and one of the ways of doing that is to actually slow down your speaking so that you can keep up, if you like, with what's going on in your head, instead of frantically trying to search for the next thing. And when you slow down, you're like I am now, I'm able to not have to cling on to the ums. Of course, that's really helpful to people in terms of listening to you. So right now in this conversation, it probably wouldn't really matter, and you wouldn't even notice it. But when someone's listening on a podcast or listening on YouTube later on, and it's not live, that's when it can be a little bit irritating. And it also makes the person seem as though they don't really know what they're talking about because they're insecure. So that was helpful to see. And there's out there was a lot of techniques of how to stop including saying a rude word instead of doing an which I wasn't keen of, in case I caught that habit as well. But one of them, which is what appealed to me, was slowing down. And then more recently, I've noticed that when I have more silence or space or quiet in my mind, I'm more present. So I'm not rattling away thinking about what's next, or on a deadline, or trying to be present, but really in the back of my mind something's bubbling away. And amazingly, I'm more productive. My level of performance is massive. I used to really worry that if I slowed down, or if I didn't go at 100 miles an hour and do all these things, that I wouldn't enjoy life as much, because I would be feeling like, what about all those things that I want to do? They're all these exciting things. I love learning and I love having different projects. And so I had this misunderstanding about how it works, because it seemed to me that to slow down would mean I'd have to cut stuff out. When actually, in effect, what I've noticed is that slowing down has made everything that I do more rocket fueled. Now, put a caveat in here, because the slowing down part came to me as an insight. And I really see that when we try to do something, because I've tried to slow down in the past, we can be sort of effective, at times, and it can work a little bit, or it can work in some situations, or it can work for a certain amount of time. But it doesn't change you. It doesn't change the level of consciousness in which you're living. when something, whatever it is, when something comes to you through insights, through a shift in understanding the world, then it changes everything. So this is not a lesson on let's all be quiet and silent. It's more of a wanting to share with you what I'm seeing about that, because some of those words might trigger an insight or a shift within you, or a curiosity to look in this direction. And when I say that, what I mean is that I knew that silence is a very powerful space to be in, but I didn't know how to access it. Or the other one was that I knew that space in my mind would be really good for me and really helpful and really nurturing, but I didn't respect the space enough to, my words for me, I didn't respect the space enough to allow it. So in my free time, I would learn something new, or get on the phone and do a game, or scroll Insta reels or something like that. I really didn't, even though I knew the space and the silence would be an amazing, refreshing, nurturing thing for me, I somehow couldn't quite allow it. Now, not all the time, obviously. There were times when during running, I love to go and run with nothing, no headphones in or anything, just be with nature. I can sit outside and look at the trees. When I'm in group or with a client, I love the silence there, and I love that space. But mostly in my life, the rest of my life, I was like speeding along, Speedy Gonzales. And then this shift happened, and now I really see the power of it. And the funny thing is, it slowed everything down. I've become more sensitive to being speedy or overdoing. I've become more aware of, rather than before, I used to block it in my diary. Right, I need space, so I'll block it in my diary, or I'll do these certain things and then I'll have some time out. I've even used an app, which tells you to work for so long and then you can have a 5-minute rest and whatever. So I've tried all different things, but now I can just feel it. And in that space and in that silence, my life is richer, and everything is lifted. You heard that saying, all boats rise with the tide. All the boats have lifted. So where it might look like, for instance, the book that I'm publishing this year, and I haven't done a few things that I intended to do this week, although it is only Monday, I looked earlier at where that might happen, and I thought, I don't need to rush this. I don't need to suddenly rearrange things and block things out. I need to have more space. And in the space, I'll know what needs to be done next. I'll know what I need to do, and I'll know when to do it. So I wanted to share that with you and see where you are with it, see what your thoughts are. Was it helpful? What did you hear? How do you relate to it in your life? Hi, Lorraine.
Hiya. Oh, that was fab. I never really thought of it like this, but when you were speaking, I thought, yeah, slow down means relax. Just relax. And I never really thought of it. And I organised this big health and wellness show. You'll remember me talking about it ages ago, and it was fantastic. But the bit I got really stressed about was at the end. They asked me to, make a video, and it was just sort of sprung on me, and I was umming and ahhing, and I was. It wasn't just umming. It was. I kept saying so this and so that, and I kept adding as well on the end of everything I said. And I just cringe when I look at that video. I really do. And I would be the person who would avoid being on video normally, but because I'd organised the event, and the family that at Keythorpe Manor that were hosting it for me, the videographer came up to us and said, "You're the organizer and you're the host. I'm going to video you and the family now." And it's like, normally I would have ducked out of that bit. So I was proud of myself that I didn't, that I actually went through with it. But I do cringe at that video now. And I wish
Yeah,
I'd relaxed, because the real juice was when me and the family sat down before and after the video and just had a really great chat about what had happened on the day. And that was really natural. And if that had been recorded, that was the real juice. Whereas I was insecure and awkward, and
yeah, I love
everyone
that.
can see that. And then the other thing was, I've just come back from the Lake District and camping, and I stumbled across this place, Wastwater. I don't know if anyone has ever been there in Eskdale, but there was this Wast Bridge End at the tip of Scarfell Pike. And as soon as I got out the car, I experienced silence like I'd never experienced before. It just knocked me back. The silence was immense, and it was the most restorative place. It was just so wonderful. I don't know if anyone's been there, but I highly, highly recommend it. And I came back. I'm no camper. I've not camped 20 years, so all that side of it was a bit of a challenge. But I came back from the whole experience really restored from taking time out in silence.
Why?
And
Why?
people go on silent retreats, don't they? I've never been on
They
one
do.
myself, but
Yeah.
I can really understand that now.
I've always thought it's such a good idea to go on a silent retreat, but then I never felt like I could be silent. But I love what you shared about realizing that silence means relax. I love that so much, because if you see that, you will relax more, and yeah, you will get that silence. And absolutely right, in any situation, yes, it's nice to go to Scaffold Pike and all of those things, but in any situation, if you know that you can get calmer or quieter or silence from relaxing, you'll find a way of doing that. And maybe the next video you'll have that in mind. And I mean, it's a fact of life that we get videoed for everything. We have these digital personalities and so on, and it's just the way it is now. And of course the juice is in when you're having that natural conversation, but we can bring an element to that through that relaxing, and allow the space for whatever it is to come through. I loved that share, Lorraine.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Katie.
Hi. I felt myself slowing down while I was listening to you because you were so nice and slow. And one of the reasons why this call interested me is because I think I'm often afraid of silence. So I've been on a couple of silent things before, but then you just hear the noise in your head like louder and louder. So that's one observation I've had of silence previously. And but the slowing down bit has become more interesting since listening to you, because I've often had this kind of visible pull to slow down, like seeing it as an image in my head of like wanting to just be on one of those American rivers, like on a raft that's going really slowly, you know, not on a white water bit of water, but on when it's really calm and slow and you can just relax, like you say. And I remember years ago hearing or seeing a quote, I think it was the Dalai Lama maybe, but it was if you have to hurry, hurry slowly. And I thought, what on earth does that mean, you know? And so while you were talking, what came to my mind is that I'm a parent of emerging teenagers, that one of the most pressurizing times of the day is getting out of the house in the morning on the school run. Right. And so when there's a time limit, it just feels normal to speed up. Like, so I'm kind of curious that, is it even possible to sort of find that place of sort of slowing down when everything in you is kind of driving you to speed up? Because the speeding up never really helps because it's really stressful, right? I'm kind of curious, could I even relax with the deadline of the school run in the morning? I'm not sure. And I didn't know if you had any, like, because you can't make yourself slow down, right? And you can't make yourself have an insight, but I just didn't know if you had any thoughts about that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. So I love your curiosity. That's going to really help you in the answer to that. And what came to mind when you were talking just before you asked that question was, yeah, of course, we don't drive 70 miles an hour and then stop. It takes a minute, right? We have to slow down. And you pointed to that there's a slowing down. So there's not from here with, like you said about, me too, I've done meditations where actually the noise gets louder. So that puts you off. But actually, that's because I was trying to go from really, really, really loud, but distracting myself from the loudness, to still, and ignoring the fact that it may take time to slow down. And actually, from 70 down to 60 down to 50, you know, that might be a more comfortable place for me to be, because then from 50 I know how to get to 30 or to 20. So that's what occurred to me when you were talking then. And I think that could help you with your question. The curiosity of, is it even possible? I mean, the answer is yes, but it has to come from you. And how do you get there? Well, you get there by being curious about that, and wondering about that, and seeing, could I slow down a little? And getting the children ready for school is not that much different from having to get the tax return in on time, or write a bid by a certain deadline. Deadlines are deadlines, right? And so it's not, well, let's just ignore deadlines. It's more like what you were saying, Katie, about what happens if my mind slows down a little. And if that happens, does that help me? And just playing with it in your own life, and let us know.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Because I probably hadn't even occurred to me that you've got to slow down in small steps.
Nice.
I just
Nice.
was expecting myself to be able to find peace instantly.
That's right. But you know what? It had occurred to you. It's just like we do. It's so easy to overlook our own wisdom because you're the one who said it. I only repeated back what you said. So I think you're onto a winner there.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Leanne?
Yeah, I found that really really interesting what everybody found in what you said. I just had an idea for the last speakers. Like I would be really interested to hear what your children have for ideas to make it a nice experience, if they could actually think about that with you. Because they most likely experience it as not relaxing either.
Yeah, interesting.
But I come from I looked my whole life or I searched for trust. I knew instinctively that trust in life, trust in things going well is a place to be where you're healthy and where you're supporting yourself. But my story I was running in my brain didn't feel like that was possible. And I realized my insight was that when I slowed down, trust wasn't an issue.
Mm.
That when I'm slow enough, that I do trust myself and I trust life, and I just start to be kinder to myself. And I found that really, really helpful to show up in a different way. And my experience with silence is really, there's a silence and there's a silence. There's a silence where you're very busy and where it's very noisy. And there's a silence where when I go into that place or fall into that place of silence, when people ask me what you're thinking about, I have to kind of research what I was thinking about. And often it comes not very much. Because it's just a place where even thinking becomes irrelevant. And it seems like a very slow place and nothing happens. And on a thinking front, for me, not much happens. But on a feeling front and how I experience life, it's the most colorful place I have experienced. And for me, slowing down started with actually realizing that the easiest way to slow down for me is being by myself. And just creating that space and hanging out in that space, whatever feels easy and right at that time. But not having an agenda of having to get there. And just allowing little moments in the day where I could fall into that place if that is possible at that time. And really enjoy them when it happens and be okay when I have a fast mind and for whatever reason can't experience it fully.
Beautiful.
So that's my experiences.
Thank you. You remind me to say that we're all going to experience it differently, and that none of it's right or wrong. It just is what it is. And the seeing of where we're at now is what's the most helpful thing. to enable more. And there's always going to be a deeper silence, a deeper stillness from where we already are. And there's I don't think there's an end to that. And so being where we are and knowing where we are and being curious about what the next level might be, that next step, is really helpful. Thank you. Dazzle?
I do a lot of video editing, Zooms, webinars, and all sorts of things. So I have an overexposure to a lot of people's ums and ands and isms and ifs and buts. And my partner had a specific one a few years ago. We didn't have much home time. I was doing night shifts and she was working day shifts, and it was a lot of it. So she felt rushed to tell me these stories of everything that had happened during the day. And then he said, and then she said, and then, oh my God, I can't believe it, but he said this, and then she said this, and then he said that. You wouldn't believe what the manager said, over and over and over again. And it was quite cute, but also terrifyingly, I can't listen to this anymore. But I'm really glad that you said that about thinking too, because I hadn't actually made that connection. And it's recently I can connect with this, because most of my best conversations or favorite conversations with my partner are when my mind isn't racing a million mile an hour, which it usually is. And when it is, I'm irritated very, very easily, short fused. I'll come home, the journey home, the best mood in the world, can't wait to get in. I'll pick them up something sweet on the way back home. And I get in and boy, something simple irritates me. I'll snap, she snaps, and all of a sudden 5 minutes ago in the car I was in a great mood, 5 minutes ago she was at home in a great mood, and now we're not in a great mood. Yeah, but when we were lay on the bed last night just dozing off and chatting, and nothing had gone on, it wasn't an eventful day or anything special about it, but I was in a really listening space, and my mind wasn't racing a million mile an hour. I wasn't thinking about any of my projects. I wasn't thinking about what needs to be done in the house or what she needs to do or what I need to do. I just lay there, and I don't actually think I spoke much, but she didn't care. She wasn't, it wasn't like she wasn't thinking either. Oh, why are you not speaking much, or why this or why that? It just gave her a space, because she clearly needed it at the time, to have freedom of speech. And so we chatted, and she would say a lot, and it was really interesting, really relevant, and I might have a response or might not, and then there'd be a few moments of silence, and then she would speak again. She has ADHD, so it's very quick for her to next conversations. And that was a really, really good conversation, because the thinking wasn't million mile an hour, not just the speaking. So yeah, really, really, really good to hear that.
Brilliant. That's such a great example of being present, and absolutely right. When our minds are a million miles an hour, of course we can't hear anybody else. Of course we're quick to temper or irritation, because we can't, the speeds are different, and it's like a gear clash. I've got to listen to that, but I can't quite listen to that because I'm still listening to what's going on in my head. And then being able to see the awareness of, oh, hey, when my mind's not racing, we can have this deep connection, and it might even be exactly the same stories, but you found them interesting, because when we listen from that quieter space, people become more interesting, because we're interested because we're not fighting with what's going on in our head. It's not fighting for attention. So I love that. I love that you see that. That will only help with more deeper conversations, and also it will help with being able to know when you're not in the space to listen, and being able to say that I actually, my head's full. I can't hear right now. I remember when I was working from home all day, and my husband would come home and he'd want to have time, you know, he'd want to get in and be at home and settle down and have a drink and go for a wash and orientate himself back to the home. And when I learned about listening, I realized that for him to listen to me, I had to listen to where his space was. And so actually I didn't try to tell him all about my day at that moment, because I knew that where he was at was wanting to just get into the home situation, and then he could hear me. But it can work both ways.
I was going to ask about that actually. Is there ways that anybody is aware of how they can get into a more listening space if they're aware of it? That's the other problem, awareness, because you might not even be aware that that's what's happening at the moment. So it sounds like he was getting out of work head, getting into home head, and he was aware that that was a process that needed to happen for him to have more enriching conversations, or enriched conversations.
Yeah.
So are there other methods? Are there other things that you're aware of? Yeah, I mean, grilled, but I think that's a really good one.
Your own awareness will help you with that. So the fact that you have now become aware of that, you'll get insight around that, because you can't, everyone could share, oh, I do this or I do that, or here's a thing to do. And it may not be appropriate or may not be perfectly right. But what you'll get is, because you now have awareness, you'll have more bespoke insight that will suit your situations. It's almost like awareness is the only thing we need, because everything else follows. Thank you so much. Chris?
I love when you said, I can't remember quite how you phrased it, but just doing silence isn't enough. You have to have something. It was something along those lines, wasn't it? And as I was sitting here, I was thinking so many of the things I do are around stillness and silence. You know, and Alexander technique, that's what they're all about, really. But in the last few years, I've been doing that, but it's not up until relatively recently, actually. It hasn't had the same effect on me as it used to. There is still, you know, there's lots of, I want to get on to the next thing. I think partly since lockdown, partly been living on my own, but there's a whole thing of, what am I doing next? What am I doing next? Why, you know, I'm not settling. So you can have that stillness and silence, but it's still not the stillness and silence in your head.
Yeah.
And I've just started to sort of almost be able to get back to that from a long time of not being able to. And particularly in, it's sort of, within Quakers, it's part of what we do. And I mean, particularly in meetings that are not meetings for worship where we sit down, but just business meetings that we have, will always start with silence. A period of silence, and for some it just made me realize, for some people that will help, and for most people who are in that situation it will help, but for others it's just a time when nobody's speaking, but they're still going, stuff's still going in their head, so it actually doesn't help. But but it's a good play. It's a good to know that that's available. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that saying that the Quakers have. It's something like the silence until the spirit moves you. So you stay quiet until the spirit moves you to speak. I love that saying. I can really relate to as well in this unprecedented times that we've had over the last few years, where we've maybe spent a lot of time in our heads more than we used to. And that heads have actually sped up rather than slowed down. I think maybe at the start of lockdown, I experienced many people slowed down for a period and enjoyed this like really strange creatures in the streets and so on, and are slowing down and watching nature and enjoying all of that. But then after a while, maybe, you know, being alone and so on, actually we fill our heads then, and we're having conversations with our head and not noticing it. I noticed earlier I had quite a lot to do, and I really enjoy having some space before a call like this. I really enjoy having, I think the quality of where I'm coming from and my experience is different when I've slowed down prior. And I've always known that, but I've sometimes found it hard to implement because there's so much to do. So it can be that in the past, when, for instance, when Derek and Omar and myself would be running a program together, I would take 2 or 3 hours out before that program and deliberately have that time. And then when we ran it a few times, it'd be half an hour, yeah, and then I'd jump on and then I'd be ready. And it would take me quite a while to like pull back and slow back down again. And so I was really busy earlier, and I was so tempted to fill the space with what I had to do next. And because I've really seen the power of the silence and the power of relaxing, something just happened in my head which sort of alerted me, oh, you're going into the wrong gear there. You're going into the next gear up, not the next gear down. And I was just able to slow back down a little bit and come and potter and get the room ready and just prepare myself and so on, and have that slowing down process. So I love that, how our sensitivity to what's going on increases when we have that shift. And to get that shift is to keep being curious and looking in the direction, as you know. So I really appreciate what you said. Thank you. Harriet.
It's so lovely listening to everyone. And I think since the last call that I was in with you, Jacqueline, I've been really looking in this direction around resting and quiet and just slowing down. And as you know, from a conversation we had, I'd kind of identified that a common thought for me when I get an idea of, oh, perhaps I'll sit down for a minute, or perhaps I'll pause and have a cup of tea. A common thought for me is, no, it's a stupid idea. Get on with something. And so I think it was Leanne that was talking about trusting in herself increases with slowing down. And I've really, really seen that over the last week or so. And it's connected to that bit someone else was talking about, and Jacqueline, you were talking about just the baby steps. Don't slow down from 70 to 0. And I really saw it today. I had quite a busy day lined up with quite a few tasks that I needed to do for work, and then a whole heap of new stuff arrived, and been working quite hard. It's in between my ears, it's been quite quiet, but you know, it's been one thing after another, trying to get stuff done and sorted for people. And it got to 6 o'clock, and I looked at my list of the things that I was meant to do today, and I realised I'd done about 2 out of about 15 things. And I went straight to, oh well, I just got to do them now, even if I have to stay up till midnight. And then I had the thought, no, I've worked all day, I've done my bit, I've earned my pay. And I looked at the list and I thought, maybe those things will get done. There's nothing on. There was one thing that I had to do today, so I thought, well, I'll do that one thing that it really will have an impact on other people if I don't. But everything else, I thought, you know, I look at the rest of my diary for the week. I have no idea where I'm going to find time for it. But I just thought, well, that's not my problem. I've worked my day. I haven't not done those things because I was messing around. I've not done those things because other stuff came up. And for me, that's kind of, it's all wrapped up in this. If I'm in the moment and I do what's in front of me in that moment, with less noise between the ears about, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, and I don't want to do this, and that person's an idiot. You know, when I let those thoughts just pass through and don't pick them up and run with them, I slow down even when I'm doing a lot, and I realize how much I've made up about what slowing down and resting looks like. Like I've definitely made up that to rest involves doing nothing. And I really see that like today actually was quite a restful work day. I did a lot, but it was restful because I didn't buy into all of the thoughts of, oh, I've got to do this, got to do that, whatever. And in that's what I loved what Leanne said about the trust bit, because that feels like a really big reconnection for me. There was a time a while ago when I really felt a deep trust in myself and my ability to know what to do in the moment, and then I just had forgotten that, just lost that connection. And that's, as you said that, Leanne, I thought, yes, that's what this is, slowing down is about. Slowing down isn't just for the sake of slowing down. For me, slowing down is because I really want to listen to that voice that knows what to do in every moment. I don't want to keep being that dominant, I know what to do, got to do this, that's a stupid idea, shut up. I want to listen to the quiet voice that says, do this now, do that now. And it's just a very quiet little slowing down. It's that slowing down from 70 to 60. And even that slowing down to 60, I can just trust myself so much more. I can hear myself more. It's amazing. I can't wait to get to 50 and see what it feels like when I'm at 50 miles an hour.
Oh,
so thank you. It's really lovely to listen to everyone.
I love it. I love it, Harriet. Absolutely. And I have found that voice does really tell you what needs to be done next. I'm almost embarrassed, with 12 years in the game. I'm almost embarrassed to say that I think that I had some sort of attitude of, well, yeah, it'll tell me, but while I'm waiting for it to tell me, I'll get on with this stuff. Almost, there's something like that was going on. And I've really been putting it to the test in that the priorities there's not enough space in the day to get all the priorities done, and somehow they jiggle themselves about so that the thing to do is what I do next. And that sometimes can be and more and more often nothing else. I love what you said about, I've done my day's work. I've done my day's work and some. So why wouldn't I just take some time now to recharge and refuel, and mean that I'm going to be more productive tomorrow? And I was talking about this at the weekend, where I was saying what I used to do is run at that speed or race at that speed for as long as possible, and then be forced to rest and recover. And then the recovery period takes longer, and then you have to still get back on it before you're quite recovered. So you're never really fully recovered. And bizarrely didn't see that actually, by not stressing it out so much like you would a set of tires or a car, by actually giving the head some rest more often and more regularly, I'm not straining it so much. So I don't need to recover. Sometimes a 20-minute nap can just help me out if I have got something else to do that day and I need some respite. Whereas a 20-minute nap would be such a drop in the ocean at other times when I've overstretched that muscle. That's right, I was talking about going to the gym and how we rest the muscles when we go to the gym. Like, everyone knows you do this and then you have to have a rest day and then you do that, and we don't do that with our heads. And I'm finding how beneficial that can be. Thank you. Miss Wendy Davey.
You might not get silence because my dog might bark, but we'll see. Let's see. Just shall I throw a pillow at it? No, it's okay. It amused me at the beginning. You spoke about how some people go off to a silent retreat. What that brought to mind was when Sid explained how people, to find wisdom, they go on a long journey and travel up a mountain to find wisdom. So you can go on a long journey abroad to find silence. And of course, it's always within us. So it's quite comical. And what came to me is, if we can pause and take that silence, and society now, it's harder to do because we have social media. And if you go back, before we had that, we had TVs. Before we had that, we had radios. But before that, people had more silence, which is why you get some beautiful books of poetry and beautiful books to read, because people had more silence. And what came to me just then was that, we think in silence that there's no words, but there are words trying to come through in silence. They're trying to come through from your wisdom. They're trying to come through, or they can come through in silence. It's the one time that our wisdom can speak. But I do get it, because we're in a society, and certainly working with students with ADHD and autism who can be quite uncomfortable with silence and thoughts in their head. But if the whole of this Western world can pause and have silence, we'd hear the most powerful words speak to us from our wisdom.
Beautiful. Nothing to add to that. Wilson.
Hey,
Hey.
what's happening, beautiful people? What's happening, Mama J? You alright?
All good, all good. Really happy to see you.
Oh, vice versa, man. I've enjoyed this conversation a lot. I've literally enjoyed this conversation a lot, and just it's beautiful to listen. Do you know what I mean? Because even during that conversation, it came to me that like, for me, slowly my concept of silence has been building over the years. Do you know what I mean? I see how my wisdom just builds and adds things and drops things off, and the wisdom's always shaping itself to better me. And I think one of the greatest things I heard, and I really thought I should have heard this ages ago, but I think I've only heard it in the last 3 years or maybe 4. was I didn't even know that silence and listen, like silence was do you know what I mean? Silence and listen, I didn't know. But when someone put that forth to me, it blew my mind, because it gave me a new meaning of silence. Do you know what I mean? And silence is just to listen to yourself. And I realized when you're silent, you're actually listening to yourself. Do you know what I mean? You're listening to yourself, you're listening to your surroundings, you're connecting yourself to this earth, like you're fully connected. So it's that, to me, I realized even in the heat of the rough, if I listen, I'm dipping into that silence. Like I'm literally dipping into that silence while I'm in the rush of the day and I got this to do and that to do. I literally dip into that silence, and sometimes I'm not even aware of it. I still use the wisdom and I still go with it. I still get the feeling, but I'm not even aware that I dipped into the silence. But that just occurred to me in this call. But that, yeah, it's kind of a new insight to me as well, but it makes sense to me.
I love it. I love it so much. I dipped in it myself just then when you were speaking. And also you reminded me that we can all be doing that without really knowing. So we are all experiencing that dip into that beautiful space, and we probably aren't even aware of it. And actually, rather than looking for how can I get to the next level, or how can I do this, look for where it's already happening, because inevitably it will be.
I love that. And we know it's happening. Like we know it's there regardless of any situation, whatever you're doing, anything, it's there regardless. But I feel like there was that story you first told, and I first ever heard, and it was in your paper, of when they I can't remember, I'm not gonna say it, but when they about humans trying to find it, and he said hide it in them. And that makes sense to me now more, because it's like once we're looking outside for it, we're not looking inside. We're far from, do you know what I mean? We're far from inside because we're all the way outside. But once we look inside, we'll find all of that, and it's already with us. So it's like, even when you said earlier, I loved it when you said awareness, that's all you need. that's kind of all you need, because if you're not aware, you're not aware. And once you're aware, you see it and you can't unsee it. And it's just beautiful. Like, and I think all you do really need is awareness. And once you see something, it doesn't mean everything will change. It just means you've seen something. Your wisdom has now grown that much more, or you've added or shedded. But yeah, no, I appreciate this conversation, man.
Likewise, I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Dazzle, did you have your hand up and change your mind, or did you want to have something to say?
If you allow me to speak, I'm not going to stop. It's just, wow, everybody's so, yeah, there's so much cool stuff there. Yeah. Wow. One thing I will touch on, because it will be, I'm able to articulate it within 5 minutes. What Wilson just said about knowing when you're in a listening space, and awareness and lack of awareness, and being aware of a lack of awareness. When you're in a listening place, and when you're in that, when you're in that free headspace where you have got that ability to hear and feel and think, not just for you, you're not thinking about you. So of course it's such a beautiful place to be. And Wilson saying that reminded me that I wasn't aware that last night's conversation with my partner was so beautiful. It was only today that I sort of went, wow, I was really listening. I felt it, of course, it was bliss, it was lovely. But today at work, I was going, yeah, that was really cool. And why was it really cool? Oh, because I was listening. Oh yeah. And so I was thinking again. But yeah, this is a great conversation. Love it. I think other people have had their hands up a few times though.
Yes, I'm gonna go. Thank you. Harriet.
I've thought of saying what I'm about to say, and then I thought, no, that's stupid. So I've got to say it now, because then that's the new rule for me. And I had this insight a few days ago. I was having quite a sleepless night, and at one point I woke up and I was listening to I think it was the owl. I could hear some bird, and then I woke up and I could hear something. Maybe my husband snoring or something. And then a bit later, I woke up and I could hear nothing, and I really listened to the nothing. And I really remember noticing the nothing in that silence. And then a few hours later, I woke up again and the birds were singing. But I had this extraordinary experience because I could hear the nothing as well. I don't know how to say that in any other way than that I could hear the silence and the noise. And what came to me from that was the silence is the constant. The silence is constantly there, and the noise dips in and out. And that was what I thought I'd share.
I'm glad we've got that new rule. Katie.
Just wanted to say, Jacqueline, this has been an immensely helpful conversation. I've just had a little bit of an insight listening to everybody. An area I've really struggled with is that my husband is quite non-verbal, as in he doesn't like to chat a lot. He's quite silent a lot of the time, and that sort of tends to send me into a freak out space because I like talking and conversation. That's how I feel I connect. And I've really struggled with how do I connect when he doesn't want to say anything and there's nobody to listen to because he's not speaking. So how am I supposed to listen when he's not speaking? Anyway, it just tweaked that it's not about listening to him, it's about listening back into myself and about the curiosity part of it and the slowing down part of it, that if I just even notice that I'm speeding up when he's silent, that I can turn the listening back into me, start slowing down again, and just get a little bit curious about the fact that, oh, this thing's happening again where I freak out when he's not talking, because the connection is, it just twigged that the connection is the connection back to me and my heart. And then in that space, I'll know how to respond to his silence, and it won't all seem like such a big deal that it's always seemed like. So I really appreciate all the conversations we've had. Don't think I'd have recognized that otherwise.
I love that. And I love that you appreciate the conversation. But the fact that you slowed down is what helped you to see that. That came from you and from your own quiet. And so I invite you and encourage you to acknowledge that. I've really found that when we can see where it comes from and we can acknowledge where it comes from, and I'd even go so far to be grateful from where, what we see, we see more, or we see the depth of that. That may look like a tweak, I think you called it, which is absolutely brilliant. But there's the shift that's happened behind that tweak. It's like, when a boat or a ferry goes past, and then there's this ripple effect of the water, which carries on for quite some time. It could be that you're seeing the big splash, but actually there's all this ripple going on behind that you may not even recognize as being related to what you just saw. And the access to that, or the nurturing of that, is through acknowledging it and seeing it for what it is and acknowledging yourself. So I'm so pleased that you shared that. Thank you. Leanne?
Yeah, I wanted to add something in. I loved that conversation. I'm really inspired by everyone. So many new ways of seeing it, so many new ways of exploring it. And I wanted just to share a bit where health kicks in, even though it looks like it's not health talking. I wasn't aware of 3P then, which I'm really grateful for now, but I had the breakdown, work-related breakdown, where my brain just shut off and I couldn't think. And up to the day, I really see that as my biggest gift life has presented me in my life, to stop not having a chance to move, not having a chance to do anything, and feeling healthier than I ever felt before. Dropping into that place where you were okay, even though everyone believed you weren't. And it looked like you weren't, but you connected to that health underneath all of that clutter and all of that busyness. And yeah, that was for me the starting point, really, to see that when you're in that place, lots of things are choices. They come maybe as have-tos and should-tos, but actually when you narrow it down, they're choices. And the calmer you become, or the more you allow to see everything as a choice, the less you feel the urge to have to choose everything or to do everything, and you become more choosy about what is worth getting engaged with. I hope that makes sense, how I expressed that. But it was, up to the day, and it's a long time ago. I feel so blessed that my body reacted that way, and I really believe that the body is such a friend of ours to show us when we go into when we're going away from health.
Nice, that's beautiful. Thank you. So we are coming to the end. I really loved this conversation. I want to say hello to Erica and Derek and Bonnie and Cheryl, and Vicky was here, and Steve and Nadine and Gary. And I invite you to take a moment and reflect on our session today. And in the reflection, just see if a word comes to mind that you want to share as we end.
Grateful.
Thank you.
It's still relaxed for me.
Peaceful.
Love.
Space.
Illness.
Comfort zone.
Mine was stillness as well.
be minded.
Awareness.
Mine is hopeful.
And mine is the same as Nadine, which she put in the chat, which is peaceful.
Going calm.
Everybody gone who wants to go?
Connection.
Well, mine was delighted. I feel so delighted. It's been a lush conversation. Thank you so much. And happy birthday to me.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Happy birthday. Bye.
See you next time. See you next month. We're going to do one in August.
Thank you.
Bye, bye, bye. Friends, thank you for being a part of this conversation. We'd love to hear from you. If you had any thoughts or insights or anything you'd like to add, do leave a comment below this video. If you'd like to join us live in this conversation next time, sign up for our next free event. The link is in the description below. We'd love to hear from you. Lots of love. Bye.